press on mute.
Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please take care as your reality is adjusted.
Did it work? Welcome back, folks. I think I got it right that time. It seemed to play through all the way through properly. Stop screen share. Stop screen share. Oh, add Dennis to the stream. Quick, add Dennis. Right.
how are we doing? How you doing, Kiki?
Got a little bit of fallback from you, but we'll see how we go. Yes, welcome back, folks, to another edition of Excalibre on this Moon Day evening on the 18th of the 11th, 2019. I'm going to mute you just for a sec, guys. It's just my volume coming out of your speaker is a little bit loud. I'm being loud again. 18th of the 11th, 2019. 1/8 is a 9, 9/11. No, it's November. Get on with it. Greetings, well met, salutations. I'm just flicking through my different tabs to make sure I've got all the different bits open that I need. Hello to everyone in the chat room. I'll come back in 2 seconds and say hello and welcome everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. Yes, I got that going. And I got that. Right, okay, we can get on with it. Yeah, another edition of Excalibre, episode 13 of season 3, which is just loose titling, just for the fact that you keep a number on them each one you do. We ended up in season 3 because it seemed appropriate to switch gears once the situation changed with Google Hangouts and started using the StreamYard software, which has been working great so far. So good stuff from that. I have now started up a BitChute account. I haven't yet set up a channel on there, but I will in the coming days. I'll sort out setting up a channel and just put something on it for now, just so it keeps it there as a foothold. Excuse me, a foothold in that platform. And I can start shifting stuff over if and as and when required, because you're probably quite aware, and I've ranted about a lot recently, YouTube is very much coming towards the end of its original life, to put it one way, in one metaphor. The platform, with the intention as it was when it was originally set up as being YouTube, as in a service of a video presentation service available for the public to make use of and to broadcast themselves, or their content that they create, such that it's a public viewable outlet for the general public to make use of. It's not that anymore, is it? It's become the new television, the new media, and it's been systematically co-opted and appropriated and taken over and just turned into yet another outlet for the mainstream media to keep pushing their narratives. Why is my chat room not updating? I'll come back to that in a sec. It's getting a bit slow for some reason. Let's try shutting down that one just for now, because my system or my connection is still struggling a bit. I think I mentioned it last week. Something's going on with my connection from BT, British Telecom, which is my ISP at the moment. they haven't said to me that they're doing any particular work in the local area. There's no localized outages, but there's a problem with my connection. And at the moment, I've got an average of 1.5 meg download speed, which is interesting considering it seems to be able to cope with doing this. But it keeps, I've tried a couple of different speed checkers online. It keeps reporting the same average speed to me, which is a bit strange, but whatever. There's something going on with my connection, so I'll just shut a couple of things down and hopefully the chat room will catch up again. I can see it moving again now. YouTube's not what it used to be, so I've already got accounts on other platforms just in case, but BitChute seems to be picking up both in popularity and in its usability, so it's worth giving it a try. It's at the moment been still fairly open to what people want to talk about or put up there as content. Me doing this kind of stuff, it's not exactly popular in the YouTube environment at the moment, and it's going to get less popular as things go on. So being prepared to move, as it were, is a good idea. So I've got a BitChute account set up. I'll post a video or something with a link and stuff once I've got it more organized. But for now, just to let people know. Right, chat room. Hello, everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. Greetings. Sorry, coughing a fair bit tonight. It's getting a lot chillier here in the UK now, so temperature's dropping. Paula B, hello. Good evening. Crypto Callus. And New Being, hello. And Cardini, hello. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And Dottie, a cannabis-based life form, hello. Really graceful, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. I watched your video earlier this afternoon, and I thought, yes, thank you. Synchronistically aligning with some of the things I wanted to talk about, and as you always do, as you're so good at doing, encapsulating a lot of information for people that helps get a lot of these ideas across in a way that hopefully more people can start taking notice of this kind of thing as it's happening, like the YouTube censorship and the changes in that media and the media that's available to people to look at. So please, people check out Really Graceful's channel and her work and her BitChute channel, because if YouTube keeps clamping down in this environment, then we're going to end up moving to other platforms. And thank you to Mascara Snake and Patrick Nee, who posted comments with links to the episode I did a couple of weeks ago, which I hadn't noticed because YouTube's doing its thing where it's not showing or directly showing comments with links in. So you have to go to the filter thing and select show newest comment and stuff like that, and then they appear. So I didn't know they were there. I hadn't noticed them. But I think it was Mascara Snake had shared a link to Really Graceful's channel. And that's, I saw that this afternoon. This moment, think, well, bloody Google. This is the kind of low level or lesser shadow banning tactics that they're doing. They claim they're doing this for people's benefit, as in they're giving you tools to enable you to moderate the chat and comments and stuff like that. But in reality, they're doing little tricks like this, where it's like, oh, you didn't realize you had those comments because we didn't let you see them directly. So you have to do this little twiddling about before they show up, and then, oh, look, I got comments. And when somebody comes to look at your video and they look down to the comment section and they only see half of what is actually there, because a lot of people won't realize or go to the effort of clicking that filter button to show more comments and whatever. Little bits of trickery that all add up together to being a major effort to quell or chill the conversation and the exchanges of information. So yeah, anyway, get on with saying hello to the chat room. I said hello to you lot. And scrolling down, you in the chat room. Ridiculizer, hello mate. Sorry if you busy, and I know often you're working on a Monday night, but thanks for joining in. Join in if you can, right? And if there's a problem with the audio, just join in a bit or something if you want. You're welcome to. And Stewie, hello. Thanks for joining in. And I'm scrolling as the chat room actually caught up now, I think. Super Leads, hello, mate. Hope you're well. Steve, hello. Steve to Goose does his mystery show on a Thursday night. Check it out if you haven't seen before. Talking about lots of interesting stuff and playing some good music as well. So it's a much more chilled atmosphere if you need a bit of what's the word for it? A salve, a balm from all the craziness. And I'm scrolling down. James Owen, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat early. So I'd say hello to you before the end of the show. Cheers, mate. Thanks for sharing it around like you do. And Supreme Lord Commander, hello. And I'm scrolling, just in case I miss anyone out. Said hello to you lot. The chat's catching up a bit now, just getting it in like chunks. Chip came home, or Jip came home. I'm not sure how you're pronouncing the J on that. Hello. Thanks for joining in the chat room. And I think I've scrolled all the way to the bottom there. Okay. Let's get on with it before I distract myself more. And please check out Jeff's channel, Supreme Lord Commander, and also the Jeff Censored channel, the Jeff Live channel, and his BitChute channel. Because like I was talking about earlier, as these compressions increase, more and more people are going to get squeezed off this platform in one way or another. And as I said, BitChute seems to be picking up in both popularity and serviceable functionality. So check it out before this just collapses in on itself. Right. To try and explain, the subtitle this evening, printzs bogof speech. And I did mention earlier in reference to really Graceful's videos. Her video was about we are all being groomed. I could do a quick screen share just to show you the title, but you get the title. We are all being groomed. Check that out, and there's a lot of good information in there for those people that are often dubious when we bring up these kind of topics or talk about these kind of methodologies that have been enacted on the general populace for the past however many years. There is a collection presented by Grace in that video that will show you plenty of links and signposts to where you can see the evidence to back up this argument. This is not, just random speculation. There is plenty of paper trail there for people that want to go and look, to actually make the effort to look for this information. There has been a paper trail of evidence for many years. It's just the system has been quite good at distracting people and spinning situations so that the general populace are happily going about their day, their distractions, their semi-sleeping hypnotic state, such that the news moves on. The rolling news system moves on to the next story and the next story, and people forget about things. And then when you bring up the idea, they go, oh, there's no evidence for that. You go, do you remember so-and-so? You only seen this study report from 20 years ago that pointed this information out back then. That's the kind of thing when I often reference technology and 5G, the coming wave of 5G upgrades, and people say, oh, there's never been a study that shows EMF is bad for people. You go, oh, you keep looking, you'll find them. And they are real studies by respected academics, all the usual kind of fallacious arguments to claim that they're crazy conspiracy theories. Nah. But anyway, I'm digressing. Back to the prints. And I've deliberately misspelt it in the title, not for any reason to do with word magic or gematria or anything like that, just simply because I thought it was better to not spell it in the correct English spelling. Because of the algorithms and stuff like that. I know that the people who may appreciate this conversation, this information, these ideas, will be able to find this stuff anyway, and the general populace is not likely to see this in their recommended list, because if you include certain things, the algorithm will go, oh, naughty talk, and we'll push that to the back, we'll shadow ban that, and the public will never know about it. So make the spelling a bit different was the way I was thinking, just to mess with the algorithms a bit. Anyway, yeah, the printzs bogof speech. The Prince, obviously, if you're not aware of it, Prince Andrew recently did an interview with a BBC interviewer, supposedly to address the questions and the speculations and the conspiracy gossip about his associations with Jeffrey Epstein, who did not kill himself. I thought about including that in the subtitle as well again this week, but yeah. Avoid that particular algorithm for now, I think. But yeah, his associations with that convicted paedophile. Don't forget that. He did actually get convicted, even though he served a pathetic sentence. And, you know, that whole situation was a joke, but he did actually get convicted. So the Prince has this association with this guy, and then now comes to do this interview. I haven't watched the interview. I've seen still pictures, and I've seen a couple of little video clips, only a few seconds long, where he's answering one particular question and whatever. I didn't want to sit through an hour-long interview with that guy, because call me presumptive and cynical and whatever else, yeah, but I had a pretty good idea of how it was going to play out. And I knew he wasn't going to give any answers that would, you know, be directly answering some of the most pertinent and, you know, digging questions. No, it's all going to be softball shit that he'll be fed with so that he can spin it, and so that he can supposedly damage control the situation for some reason, or to follow some particular narrative, whatever. And unsurprisingly, over the last couple of days, plenty of people have been putting up articles and videos that are pointing out all this kind of stuff of what exactly did he say in terms of answering the allegations, whether they're speculative or not. Did he really answer any of the allegations directly, or did he just take the opportunity to, you know, spout some bullshit? Did he tell a few lies? Did he answer with a lie and stuff like that? You know, dancing around the algorithms at the moment, thinking of how to word this, and in a way, that's almost exactly what he was doing. The algorithm being the public viewing that interview and looking for keywords and phrases and body language and facial expression and emotion. Yeah. Whether he did or didn't, I think we should leave that to the ghost in the machine to approve my video or not. That'll give you your answer of whether he did or did not lie during that interview. But the way I looked at it was, well, he's just presenting a lie to the public in a way where, in his dumbness and his arrogance, he thinks he can say this stuff and spin it and present himself as this, that, and the other, the noble prince and whatever, and we'll deal with this situation. I think a good portion of the populace probably looked at that interview and just thought, "You're lying, mate. You're a liar. You're talking bullshit." I'm certain there's going to be a good number of the royalist devotees who will believe anything that the royals say and accept whatever is presented to them and whatever. Yeah, of course there is, but I think a good portion of the populace will either be highly dubious about what he was saying, or they'll just outright disbelieve it and see it for what it is, just bullshit and spin and lies. And that had me then thinking about the recent situation with Epstein, and the blatant lie of him committing suicide in some convoluted manner while the two guards were sleeping and all the video cameras didn't work and all this pile of coincidences. You know, you were a coincidence theorist. How many coincidences before you start to realize that there is a conspiracy going on? Are you a victim of gaslighting? Because that's what the coincidence theory narrative is leading you to or revealing to you. You are being gaslit. That Epstein suicide situation is gaslighting. The way it's being presented to the public is mass gaslighting. So that, I mean, had me thinking about that kind of, well, this is almost like a bogof. Yeah, bogof is an acronym that means buy one, get one free. It was an unfortunate mental plague that began, I think, in the 90s with some advertising company that thought it would be a good gimmick, and the media got saturated with that. I suppose you call it a trope, a meme of that phrase, and loads of shops and outlets started using it as a sales gimmick. You know, you buy one, you get one free, all that kind of stuff. And it's become burned into the psyche of most Western nations, I think, of this kind of sales technique and that phrase as a sales gimmick. But I was thinking of it from the point of view of, well, the impression we're given by the media is that the public bought the first lie, that Epstein committed suicide. So now you're getting the free one. It's a bogof, because the two of them are connected, Epstein and Andrew. You know, that's pretty obvious from all the paper trail of evidence over the years. And it's not just coincidence that he happened to be at a party that Epstein was hosting. And no, they were directly interrelating on a regular basis. As soon as Epstein got out of prison, he went to visit him so that he could get his jollies or whatever they were doing. He wanted to get back in with this guy as soon as he could. So the public's being presented with this bogof of gaslighting. And that's what I thought, bogof speech. He's making a little speech, even though it's presented as it's meant to be an interview where the interviewer is going to ask him some questions that should deal with all people's queries about the situation involving a prince and this convicted paedophile. But that was the feeder, that was the vehicle that enabled him to make a little speech. So he's making his free speech of a lie presented to the public that he's he's your freebie. You caught the lie about Epstein, so here's your freebie. You have a bogof lie. And that had me thinking about that gaslighting effect, which I just mentioned, and how I'm fairly confident that a good portion of the populace is not going to believe this bullshit, that they're going to see it as being spin, that if anything, it just puts even more of a bad light onto the royals and this situation that involved characters such as Epstein and Savile, and goes back many decades, if longer, really, when you see the reality of how this system operates. But this is all being put in front of the public. I really don't think that the entourage around a prince would be dumb and arrogant enough to think that doing something like this would work well for their situation. The prince himself, he's probably dumb and arrogant enough to think, oh yeah, I can talk to the public and do this interview and we'll spin it and everything will be fine. Nah. But his entourage thinking that, no, they would have known that this is not a good idea if the true intention is to actually dissolve the situation and get the royals out of trouble and move away from the whole problem, etc. They wouldn't do something like this. They're not that dumb. So why then put this in front of the public? Is this a further element of where the gaslighting becomes the dominance? The kind of psychology where gaslighting is used to put somebody into a subordinate psychological position such that they acquiesce or they give into the psychological dominance of the person that's carrying out the gaslighting. It's the same kind of methodology that is used by a sexual dominant to turn somebody into a subservient, a subserving gimp. I did make, this is kind of stuff I was ranting about last week. This kind of psychological manipulation is about making somebody accept and acquiesce psychologically, which then leads to the physical acceptance and acquiescence of being dominated by somebody else or some other group. You can simplify it as an example to think of like it's the big bully gang leader who will deliberately psychologically manipulate the lesser people in the gang to make sure that they all stay in their role, that they all stay lesser psychopaths and never try to compete with the king, the leader. You know, I listened to an interview with, what's his name, Tyson Fury, and just listening to some of the things he was talking about, how, you know, the kind of psychological warfare that happens between fighters before they meet up for a match, you know, before they even get in the ring. They are psychologically jousting with each other. So this kind of effort to deliberately put in front of the public en masse this situation where you've got to be a real, you know, total royalist believer to not have any questions after watching that interview with the guy and some of the claims he makes, like not sweating and stuff like that. And sort of implying that some of the photographs could have been doctored or that they're fake or something. So instead, I was thinking, well, is this being done deliberately? Because it's not about actually spinning away from the story. They're actually profiting from that psychological dominance that the story represents by its acceptance by the public. Yeah, if you bought the lie about Epstein, you just, you know, you've gone down a notch in terms of your position compared to the dominant that is telling you this gaslit storyline. And now you're getting the reinforcement. Yeah, this prince can spout his bullshit, and if you buy it, you're locked in to that dominance, that the other parties that dominate over you, because they can tell you outright bullshit to your face and you accept it. And then I saw Gracie's video about we're all being groomed, and I thought, yes, this is a good example of how the media, and not just the companies that produce the programs and the newscasts and the video production, all that kind of stuff. The media, in the sense as well of the industry that is the entourage of spin doctors around somebody like a prince and the British royal family in particular. You know, they've got access to the best of the best in whatever department and industry that they want access to. These spin doctors, these narrative writers, being used to present something to the public that reinforces a claim to control, as in control over others. The system of authority saying, yeah, we're like this. We are like Epstein and Savile and our associations with these people. But what are you going to do about it, slave? You are the subservient. I can lie to your face and yet still you'll accept it. Still you'll wave the little flag and keep paying your taxes and keep buying the souvenirs and keep worshipping the new icons, the new idols of the young prince and his princess, the new trendy social media royals that are so concerned about the world that they fly all over the place, you know, creating carbon footprints everywhere. When the aliens come to look for us and they see these carbon footprints everywhere. Yeah. Anyway, digressing. Hopefully that makes sense in the point of questioning why is this even being presented to the public. that for a number of years there's been a good amount of evidence to show that Prince Andrew had an association with Jeffrey Epstein that needs to be investigated, should have been investigated a long time ago, and it's been deliberately moved out of the public conversation or the public's thinking. And we have at the same time a general atmosphere in the public that communication and the sharing of information is being stomped on, is being quelled, is being restricted, is being fenced in. There are restrictions on things you can say or subjects you can talk about, questions you can ask. And this comes back then to the questions about free speech and the use of these media platforms to enable the general populace to communicate directly with each other about what the hell's going on. What do you think about this? What did you think about that bit of evidence? What did you think about that conversation? All of that is gradually being corralled and restricted into controlled spaces. And this in particular stood out for me over stuff that's been happening recently, and I thought I wanted to mention it again this week. And I could see how it was part of this situation about the questions to do with Prince Andrew and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, because I can guarantee they will use this and the conversation that comes out of it as another reason to put more bricks in the virtual walls of this environment, this digital environment of communication. So if you're sharing ideas or information online about that situation, you could face restrictions because you're talking about something that you're not supposed to be talking about. But it also still had me thinking about how the very concept of free speech has been and still is, and even more so, being used against people. This is something I've tried to explain before, and I know last week I was having a bit of a rant, and I thought, especially for new subscribers, if you haven't heard me talking about stuff before, you may have been a bit, taken aback because I was swearing a lot and I was ranting a lot, but I don't avoid the use of bad language. There is no such thing as bad language, I don't think. It's the intent behind it that matters. But I try to not overuse it because that disempowers it. To me, the whole point of the swear words, that kind of language, is so that you can add emphasis and emotional velocity, as somebody once called it years ago, emotional velocity to what you're trying to say. So there is a very good and valid use to bad language, to swear words, to profanity. It's not something that I agree that you should take it out of the language completely. And you just have to be sensible and judicious in your use of it. Don't overuse it. And it's context that matters as well. You don't use it in the wrong kind of situations. Yeah? And that's partly what I was trying to describe. Free speech is an absolute right. But you also still have to question what is being said with that use of free speech. The classic quote that a lot of people refer to, I have for many years, is, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it. Yeah, okay. So you don't agree with what's said, but the person's still allowed to say it, that right of free speech. And then you deal with the content of what they said by using their right of free speech. So it doesn't contradict itself, and it doesn't deny the fact that some people will talk stuff or say stuff that is abhorrent, that is not appropriate, that within a certain context is just a really bad idea. It's not a good idea to have somebody in front of little children talking openly about, I think you can get the idea, you can think of some very abhorrent subjects and things to talk about, that it would not be a good thing to do in front of small children. So therefore, that is a limitation a socially accepted, most of the time, socially acceptable limitation for moral reasons about the health of every individual there and the society that grows from those individuals. So if you don't want a society full of psychopaths, you don't talk about pederasty and pedophilia and stuff like that in front of small children, not in graphic detail. You use analogy and metaphor to try and explain to them the dangers and risks that are out there in the world and things like that, but you would not openly talk about what happens in those situations in front of small children, because that would not be good for their mental health. So it's not a matter of restricting people's free speech, it's a matter of more critically thinking about the content of what they actually say when they make use of their free speech. This is why last week I was trying to explain it from the point of view of, if you come into this environment and all you're doing is spouting abuse, you will get a very small window of tolerance. As in, yes, mate, you have your right to free speech. What are you going to say? You're a poo-poo head, you're a poo-poo head, you're a poo-poo head. Right, fine, mate, boot. The content of your speech served no beneficial purpose. So go away. If you're going to make use of your free speech, use it to actually say something that can have some beneficial purpose to yourself and others, preferably both, not just one or the other, not just you, not just other people, both. And this was, in a way, what I was trying to describe last week, but I was more concerned with just ranting about certain stuff that I could see happening. But then this situation with the printzs occurs, and it had me thinking about this, you know, the concept of how the public is gaslit en masse by the use of the media and the narratives that are presented to them by that media. And that then had me thinking about that free speech question of, well, yeah, the right to free speech, or the ability of free speech, really. To me, that is absolute, yes. But I can see how it has been manipulated and is actively being used against people, because they have propagated the idea to such a degree that now, if you even talk about these concepts, you're considered using bad language, deviant speak, deviant labeling, all that kind of thing. So you end up getting yourself restricted by the algorithms, you get censored, you get shadow banned out of public view. Certain spokesholes, the various icons and puppeteers that they put out there, you know, the Pied Pipers and whatever that they put out there to lead narratives, they are allowed to broach those kind of subjects and question those kind of things. But the general populace, no, you usually get sidelined or shut down directly. But the very right of free speech does not deny the consequences of what you're saying. Yeah, and this is something that they're deliberately leaving out of the conversation most of the time. And what they've been doing instead is making people pick one side or the other. You're either for total free speech or you're somehow against it. You know, you somehow want restrictions, which means you are acquiescing and fueling their narrative of online censorship and control of information, etc. But in this side of absolute free speech, they have deliberately concentrated on that basic principle, that foundational principle, because they know that that then leaves you open to abuse. Because if you believe in an absolute free speech foundation, then you are not allowed to be against having a drag queen transsexual talk about anal sex in front of a library gathering of young children in one of their drag queen readings. You can't, because it's free speech. So they're deliberately using this concept in a misaligned fashion to manipulate you to reinforce the very act that they want to bring in anyway, the acts and statutes that they want to bring in anyway. At the same time, and this is more what I was trying to rant about last week, it leaves you open to be abused by people who use the anonymity of the internet and the 24/7 information stream that the internet allows us to outright abuse other people. So as the internet has developed over the years, we've had these sociological phenomena of things such as gang stalking and suicide groups and troll armies. These things are only really manifesting because of the technology. Without the technology, yeah, people still used to gather in gangs and bully other people and stuff like that, but the numbers were not on the scale that they are thanks to the new technology of mass communication. And with that mass communication technology comes this ability of anonymity, which means you don't know. It could just be some idiotic troll person on the other side of the computer who just, for whatever reason, gets their jollies out of tormenting somebody else, or they're just projecting their own problems or something like that. There's various reasons, but you also don't know if that's actually part of some organized group, such as Brigade 77 or the 8800. These are actively engaged groups that are trained to utilize those kind of psychological methodologies that are normally referred to as trollisms, like ad hominem fallacy attacks, getting people trapped into emotional responses, such as like with the Epstein and printzs situation, pedophilia. People get very emotional about these kind of subjects. So that the thinking stays in the emotional center and you get no rational processing of the emotional energy. The energy doesn't complete its movement. It only goes so far into the brain and gets stuck in that emotional center. And then you get the two sides of the armies fighting with each other. Are you pro-free speech or anti-free speech? Fight, fight, fight. And the methodology and the benefit of free speech gets polluted and twisted and turned into something that it's not meant to be, actually actively working against the principle of free speech. So it has been inverted because you have been forced to enable your own self-abuse. You have been gaslit into believing that you're doing something to benefit yourself where actually you're shooting yourself in the foot. To this idea of like people have, they can say whatever they want in any situation, whenever they want and stuff like that, it can be abused. And unless other people then go, hang on a minute, right, there's consequences to what you're saying here. So, yeah, you got the right to say it. Okay, you said it. Now you've proven yourself to be an arsehole. Now you've proven yourself to be a paedophile by what you're talking about. Using my earlier example of the presenting unpleasant information to young children. Yeah. If you go around talking about that kind of stuff, then it's not going to be long before people realize that somehow your freedom of speech has to have some kind of consequences because of the potential damage that you're causing. Sorry, coughing a lot tonight. But the reason I felt it was important to try and get this across is because I feel combined that this principle of free speech is being manipulated and used in this fashion to entrap us all into that Hegelian process where it doesn't matter if you support free speech or you're against it. The things that you are undertaking and the way you're going about it are still fueling the narratives that is leading us towards this absolute control of information. Because I don't want to live in a world where there are some people out there. I know that, this is somewhat of a utopian ideal or whatever. That's why I'm saying I would like to, or I wish I could. It's an aspiration. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a pragmatic reality. But I wish that we could live in a world where people do not have a need to project their pain onto others, such that we end up with this, what we refer to as trolling or trollisms. I think there's a big difference with being able to freely express your emotions, as in somebody does or says something that you think's crazy and you go, fucking idiot. Yeah, that's releasing that emotional tension. But that doesn't mean you then stand next to that person 24/7 calling them a fucking idiot in their ear roll constantly, because free speech, you're not allowed to stop me talking, mate. I can just keep saying the same words in your ears 24/7. What are you going to do? And in effect, that is what they presented us with this new social media environment. And it is that is being programmed into the newest generation. The young children, mentioned Mark Window's last broadcast. I got the chance to listen to this afternoon as I was catching up on things. Smart drones of the new utopia on the Mark Window's channel. Oh, sorry, Windows on the World channel. And he's referencing more the kind of green agenda programming that is being put into the schools here in the UK, primarily here in the UK, he's referencing, but, you know, really it's an international situation. But they're doing the same thing when it comes to these questions about free speech and the exchange of information, and particularly in this social media environment, because the youngest generation is being brought up and indoctrinated and programmed into the very concept that this constant 24/7 information stream, where there is no privacy, and if there is no privacy, there is no ability to shut the door in the face of the troll who is saying those nasty things to you 24/7. So we end up with these sociological problems of teenage suicide and mass depression. And I know there's a lot of other causes and fuel that gets added into these situations, but this is part of it as well. The psychological abuse that is being enabled by the manipulated misuse of the right of free speech. If you really care about your free speech, if you really think it is a beneficial principle that we should have the right to do, then use it well. Because if all you do is go to people's content or their article or wherever, even in the street, if all you do is resort to ad hominem fallacy, so somebody says something that makes you feel upset, makes you feel uncomfortable, makes you feel like your paradigm, your world is falling apart because they pointed something out that makes you realize you've been lied to, even by the royals, constantly lied to. So this little image of the paradigm of your world is being attacked by what somebody is saying or presented to you. So you feel like you just have to go, oh, you fucking idiot, you fucking, you fucking ad hominem fallacy. That does nothing but serve the benefit of the very system that you say you're against. Because that is what they're using as the reason, as the justification for controlling the right of free speech. And we've seen this again and again and again over the years. And recently as well, mentioned as well, Richard D. Hall, and he recently put up some videos about Tommy Mayer, the guy who's supposedly, allegedly in prison for the alleged murder of Joe Cox, which was the MP in the UK who supposedly was stalked and attacked by an extreme right-wing supporter who decided he was going to kill her because she was in favour of staying in the EU and blah, blah. Narrative weaving, spinning, manipulation of the public perception of the reality of what is going on. These methods are well established, well documented, and again we'll see how it's put out in the media that, oh, we need to deal with these people online who are saying naughty things. They're talking about subjects that are not good, so therefore we've got to control free speech, because look at all the teenagers that are killing themselves because they're getting abused online by trolls, and so therefore we need to, you know, limit what people are able to say. I hope that makes sense of how I'm trying to describe the fact that free speech is a very valuable principle to have, but you have to apply it in a correct manner. And just because you apply that principle, that doesn't mean you then ignore the content of what is actually said by the use of that principle. In other words, when people say something, what do they actually say when they use their free speech? The system is quite happy for everybody to just fixate on the principle alone, because then they can use it against you in the same way that they try to use people's love and compassion against them. So, oh, you care about people, do you? You care about the homeless? Then you have to let homeless people live in your home. And if you don't really believe in helping the homeless. And they know full well that if you do these things that they're demanding of you, your situation is more likely to fall apart and descend into some problematic situation. So then they can come back and say, look, you failed, you couldn't do it, see, it's all bullshit, it's all just utopian idealism, we proved you wrong. They do the same with the principle of free speech. They say, oh, you believe in free speech, do you? Oh, well, you have to let me abuse you then. You have to let me say whatever I want to you constantly, and you can't turn me off, because then you deny my free speech. And in doing so, they're then enabled to abuse people en masse and use the resulting effect of that as a justification to bring in legislation to control free speech. Do you see how it works? Inverted? Hopefully. I know I'm being a bit sarcastic, sorry. This is not directed at any individual. Please don't take it personally. And in the way I was trying to describe it earlier, sorry, often people resort to that kind of abusive language or insulting language because they don't actually have anything else to say. So they have this need to vent the emotional blockage. So it comes out as, you know, just what is an ad hominem fallacy, basically, because they can't, you know, holding it in is not a good idea. I'm not suggesting that you don't let it out. Yeah? That can lead to problems with stress and stuff like that, and other psychological problems from repressing things. But that's not, you know, that's not where it ends. The ability to insult others is part of the principle of free speech. But if all you do is use your right of free speech to do nothing but insult people, you're going to end up being very much on your own, or only able to hang around with other people that do the same thing. And yeah, in the long run, it's not really healthy and beneficial to you. It's good to let it out. But once you let that energy begin to flow again, where then do you utilize that energy to fuel your thinking and your cognitive abilities to actually work through a problem and maybe get to something of a solution, or being able to move forward or move away from things that are bad for you and towards other stuff that's good for you? They want you to fixate on just that element of, oh yeah, you've got to, you know, free speech, and you know, you say whatever you want to anyone. Yeah, that's all that matters, mate. So, no, that's not all that matters. Free speech is a principle, a foundation, but a foundation is just a beginning. It's what you build on top of it from there that is the whole, the totality of the importance of what you're doing. So don't let them twist it into something that then you become a self-abuser, basically, because you're enabling yourself to be abused by something that they are inverting and twisting. This is why in recent times I've had a bit more of a a stricter control. Let's put it that way. I've been a bit more, I suppose you could call it authoritarian. Yeah, call it that if you want. And I know that unfortunately, doing things this way means unfortunately there will be some collateral damage. You could call it that, as a metaphor. There will be some collateral damage, that there are some people that may be innocent in their overall intent of why they're doing what they're doing, but they get booted or blocked or whatever because the way they began their interaction was from that kind of approach of being offensive, being insulting, being ad hominem fallacy and stuff like that. Yeah, there will be some collateral damage, as it were. But I would rather that there is that kind of collateral damage where it only really matters in the sense of who's on this particular channel, who's coming to my channel, so my channel, YouTube, and whether they can or cannot interact in the chat and the comments and stuff like that. So I'm not stopping them from speaking anywhere else. I'm not stopping them from saying whatever they like anywhere else. That's up to them. Yeah, what they say and wherever they say it. And I know it ends up making me the bad guy in a way, or, to a certain degree. But I would rather there's that kind of collateral damage than the opposite effect. As in, if I allow a free-for-all, I know for a fact, because I've seen it before, I've experienced it a little bit myself and on this channel, but not as severely as I've seen it happen to other people and other situations, where the very fact that you allow a free-for-all in a chat room or on a comment page or a thread or whatever, guaranteed there are some people out there, whether they're working for an agenda or a narrative or just themselves individually, they will drag that conversation or that body of information into the sewage, because that's part of the methodology, the tactics, the J-trig methodology that GCHQ uses. And that's just one agency of one nation state. The other nation states do the same kind of stuff. They utilize this kind of psychology against us constantly. So please don't be naive into thinking that there's not people out there doing this kind of stuff. There is. Just please also don't be paranoid about the extent of it and let it stop you doing what you're doing. That's part of what they want to play as well, that panopticon effect. But I would rather not have the situation fueling their justification of cracking down on freedom of speech. If people want to say something, if they've got something to say, great. But if all they say is ad hominem, insulting, offensive stuff, no, I ain't got time for that. Nobody got time for that. So, okay, yeah, I can see you venting yourself, mate. You've got a need to vent for some reason. Can you explain to me why you've got that need to vent? What is it that's making you feel so... But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully it makes sense why I was connecting that to this recent situation with the prince and the pedo. Or should it be the princely pedo? The free speech question. The free speech question is vitally important at the moment. So I felt it's worth trying to approach this question, because I think they are deliberately trying to set up this situation where they've turned it into such a dogmatic, sanctified thing that it's becoming, it's like the classic cliche of you either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. And that's what they're doing with the principle of free speech. They are actively using it against us in this situation. So you've got to think a bit more carefully about how you apply it and the consequences of it and things like that. It doesn't mean you're stopping it. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's not.
I was going to say, I had a question. Do lizards sweat?
Reptile.
I don't think they do actually. No,
Just saying.
I didn't mention the adrenochrome possibilities. You know, there's stuff like that comes to mind.
Yeah. It opens up all sorts of stuff, doesn't it? That interview was a car crash, by the way. But yeah, go on, Gary. I know you want to say something.
I was going to say, what came to my mind when you was talking was something I saw just the other day, yeah? I was looking up the, first of all, I looked up the Moloch statue, which has been put up. Now, that is really weird because it's been put up in front of the Colosseum as part of an exhibition from Carthage, but Moloch was from the Canaanites, which is opened by Israel somewhere, and the Carthaginians are from like Libya. So that's a bit strange. But then Pockets of the Future covered it, and he said like how when he Googled it, it just came up on all the right-wing sites. Yeah, and he had to check and double check and triple check because a lot of these sites are really small and you can't be sure, yeah? But then I was looking up the Bolivian thing, and I thought, well, because Bolivia is like a lefty, the divide and conquer thing, yeah, how many of those right-wing sites will cover the Bolivian coup? Yeah, maybe some of them won't bother, you know, the way a lot of the right-wing sites were against Venezuela. Yeah. And if you're wondering about Bolivia being a coup, for a start, he had no dealings with the International Monetary Fund. And for secondly, last week, he just refused a bid from a German company to mine the lithium because he wanted to use it for his own country. Yeah. Conscious Resistance has done a really good video on that. Yeah. So what's going to happen in Bolivia, I don't know. Yeah. But, you know, a lot of the people, you know, there's going to be another vote within 3 months. So it'll be an interesting one to watch. Yeah. Chile is even more interesting because they're talking about having a new constitution and voting on it. Yeah. Because the old constitution, a little bit like Spain, you know, a lot of the laws were actually laid down in Franco's time. When in Chile, the constitution was written by Pinochet and they've never changed it. So that would be an interesting one to watch as well. But back to the point, yeah, you know, a lot of the websites that will cover the Moloch because it's satanic won't touch even Evo Morales, even though the CIA, who are linked to Satanists, Aquino, and all the rest of it, because they're lefties, you know, because they've been taught for decades that lefties are no good. I mean, so that's how they attack free speech, simply divide and conquer, yeah? They take away speech from the people like, what's his name, Dankula. Yeah, and people say, it doesn't matter if Tommy Robinson doesn't have any free speech. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you say, they create all of this anyway. Like you were saying, it's all created by, you know, governments, agencies wanting to direct the way we're going. Interested in Hong Kong, I watched something today about how that's got a lot of American influence in it. You know, with the students and all this stuff, lots of connections there, which I just found out. So yeah, so there's everything's been, if you like, orchestrated by them to get the reaction from us. And it's a bit like the royal thing, you know, they want to really get everybody angry and, you know, and see the bullshit of that thing and see the lies and everything else, and then start, you know, getting angry on the streets like they've got in South America, it seems, you know, something to tip you over the edge or whatever. It seems they've been doing that quite a lot anyway, with lots of things, Brexit included and things like that, getting you frustrated with politics and seeing politicians just blatantly lie about everything, you know, every politician across the world, you know, whatever, you know, especially Trump and Boris. You know,
and
so
presenting the Prince pedo, you know, lying to people's faces.
Yeah, so getting you adjusted to that, getting you used to that kind of politician who just goes around lying his head off, you know, like Trump and Boris and all the rest of them, and you're used to it. You know, you get normalized to just this crap, and you just, you know, that's how it is. And then the royals are getting on the bandwagon, and they're doing the same thing. It seems to cover up his connections with Epstein and all that, you know. Child sex trafficking and stuff, you know. So it's but the public buy it going forward. I mean, the radio today was going crazy about, especially the Beeb, which I was really surprised at. Heard today their main show on a sort of weekday afternoons was, you know, they were absolutely going at it full on, you know, with like criticism of the lies and comparing it to Clinton and all that stuff, and just pointing out, you know, the you know, why would you want to honor a convicted sex offender, you know, as he said in the interview. You know, why would you want to do that and spend 2 days there? Oh, he wasn't really a friend, and it was just a +1 and a guest list, and that's how I knew him. Absolute bollocks, you know. And then you know, I'm assuming most of us have seen that interview, that 50-minute interview that was on yesterday or the day before. If you haven't, just if you want evidence of lies and bullshit, there you go. It's like watching a Trump speech or a Boris speech, or you know, just the normal shit that we get constantly fed, and we're expected to put up with it. It's part of the dumbing down process. It's just so it'll go to show how effective it is with the backlash of this, because it'll all just go like the Savile thing, like you'll say, like we said, quiet. It'll just get covered up, and we'll do whatever, and then he'll just disappear. He won't be mentioned, and then who's in the wings? Who's the squeaky clean guy in the wings waiting to come in? It's Prince William, the new king. Prince William has no blemish on his record whatsoever, as far as I can remember. I know he didn't dress up as a Nazi officer as his brother did, you know, just for a laugh, you know, the fancy, and all the rest of it, you know, and the fact that his grandfather's, well, his great aunties or whatever, married German Nazi officers, you know, just don't mention that bit. So William, though, squeaky clean, and Kate with the kids and everything else, that's what's waiting in the wings for the new dawn, if you like, because they're all ready for the knackers yard, the rest of them. And, you know, that will be the distraction as well when one of them go off soon, I'd imagine. Nobody lives forever, not even them. So
I can't do the... Oh, hang on. Is it catching up now? So I've been waiting for the chat box on the StreamYard control panel to update. I've been looking at it on the YouTube feed so that I could actually read the chat, because it wasn't updating on the other one. Really graceful typed in the chat. I thought it was, you know, perfectly connected to what you were saying. No expectation of morally upstanding politicians or leaders. So like you're saying, conditioning people for that kind of environment. You know, this is going to be the new environment where you have these low expectations or no expectation at all of moral upstandingness from these people. You know, people see it as being, well, yeah, he's a prince. Of course he's a pedo. Of course he does this, that, and the other. So the whole level of society is lowered.
It comes from the consumer society boom in the 70s. Everything's got built-in obsolescence. Yeah, people feel more comfortable that way. Yeah, it's easy to throw things away when you finish with them, including your politicians. Yeah,
no expectation of morally upstanding politicians or leaders. You're saying about commercialism as well. I thought I stuck it in my notes a little bit, and I thought I'd mention it, but just to add it in, because this is obviously something that can branch off into other areas of thinking and whatever. But it's intrinsically tied to the concept of property as well, because privacy is meaningless if you have no property. And I'm not just referring to a house or home as in property. Well, I should say house, a building as in property. You know? A home is another sort of separate definition, but you can't have privacy if you don't have private property. Because, you know, how can you, like I was using that kind of analogy of shutting the door in the face of the abuser, you know, if you don't have a home to live in that has a door, then you can't close off that kind of stuff that you don't want to hear, or, you know, the abusive people that you don't want to listen to, shit like that. So it is in a way very much connected to the principles of property. And that then brings us back into things like Agenda 2030, 2021, the kind of communist, socialist, you know, if you're thinking in a kind of political spectrum, they'll tell you it's communist or socialist, but really it's beyond that. It's tyrannical technocracy that will give them the ability to basically say that nobody has any property anymore, because you won't need to own anything, because everything will be made available to you on a rationed social credit score basis. So if property doesn't exist, It also helps to negate the concept of privacy, because to have privacy, you have to have somewhere that belongs to you, that is your property, that you can go and shut yourself into to make use of your privacy. Yeah. This is why they're building all those tech connections into property, into buildings now directly, so that you have no choice. It is installed. You know, you'll have your listening device in every room. The screen, as it was in 1984. You know, the Big Brother screen.
Yeah. Well, I think what's more disturbing is they're doing that with the individual as well, the human. You know, you're being your, like, say, place to go, or where you're. You know, you aren't you going to your inner world or whatever, if that's where you want to go, and that's your space, that's where you go. And they even want to hijack that with their implemented devices attached to your brain and stuff or whatever. You know, they try and that as well. Go on.
So I just throw this in because that's a really good point to add this into as well. Because listening to what Mark Windows was talking about on his show, and I know we've spoken about this kind of stuff as well quite often. But he points out that in the new educational system that they're rolling out across the UK, where they are indoctrinating young people with propaganda, and primarily about climate change, but it includes all the other elements of Agenda 21 and whatever. But part of the methodology that they're using is those kind of psychological techniques that are often used by cults and things like that, that are used to program people into a very sort of tunnel reality, or a limited ability to think. And part of that is they're telling people to be the change. You know, and it's part of their whole educational structure. You know, the classes are geared around this concept of be the change and stuff like that. And I was listening to him and I was thinking, oh, I can see what they've done with that. It's very similar to what Crowley did. As in, Crowley took the original ancient law of do as thou wilt, but do no harm, and he just cut it in half. Yeah, and he said, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. In other words, forget about the last bit, just worry about the first bit. Yeah. So he deliberately manipulated and malformed that original principle. Yeah, and in the same way, let me just finish. In the same way, they've taken what Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world, and by chopping it in half, they've altered the meaning of the statement completely. Because what he said was, be the change you want to see in the world. That gets people thinking about, well, what do I think the world needs? So you start thinking outside of yourself, and it helps develop empathy and compassion and things like that. Yeah. But if you cut it in half and say, be the change, then what you're doing is getting to people into this flux fugue state where they never actually become anything. They're in this constant amorphous nothingness. They are the change in and of itself. And as we know, the only constant in reality is change. So in other words, they go into like a null void state. They never become anything. They're just this lump of stuff.
Bingo. And this is why Crowley did this. This is why Crowley got away with it. And this is absolutely parallel with what you're saying. Because up to the point of Crowley, most people were familiar with the word thou as a word meaning God. You read your Bible and it says thou, that God this, thou, God that. And then you approach people who don't read the Bible so much, and they've even modernized it. And now thou, the ego takes over. Thou, that's me. And the same thing with be the change. Not be the change outside of yourself in the world, but be the change. It's a temptation to the ego. Oh, I can do that. I can be the change. And then, like you say, they're directionless because they're an ego. So it's exactly parallel. Yeah. It's a fight against consciousness. Really.
It makes them... It inverts their energy such that their only concern is everything coming into themselves. So it creates that narcissistic psychological foundation that they then build on through the indoctrination, primarily through the education system.
It's interesting that the spells are cast, you know, in that sense. You know, with the magic, it works on the people, and like you say, cutting things in half in that way achieves that. And that's what we've got as a society, it seems, this sort of lost sort of souls, with huge rises in mental health issues and being able just to cope generally with everything, you know, and that sort of learned helplessness stuff we talk about a lot. Yeah. So it's powerful stuff. People think you're talking crazy, but just look at what, you know, look at what we live in. Look at the world around us now.
Look, I remember once saying like that life, you know, it's like a book that's the same for everybody. But like when you're a kid, you're just looking at the letters and the shape of them and the colour of them. But as you grow up, you learn to put in little full stops so you can make sense of the world. Yeah. And then later, you turn some of the full stops into commas. So your attention span is getting longer. And now you're, you know, to be comma. That is the question, comma. That whole monologue in Shakespeare is like 32 commas. You know, you've got to hold 32 ideas in your head, you know, and arrange them. That's a long.
I think like when things start in the head, like as I say, they work this trick on us. It'll also be cured in the head by how we think again, and they can't really, you know, control that in a sense. You know, it's up to you, the individual, to do your own thinking, as we always say. You know, they can't yet. They don't have the devices yet. I don't think they ever will, and that's something that it works against it. So you've got, you know, we're in a sort of, seems like a dark, gloomy era of all this stuff we talk about and what they're trying to do and mess with us and everything, the family, kids, food, everything. But there's still that, I think it swings back round again. It starts to swing. Hopefully in time, just before the next ice age, you know.
I think they have anticipated this, Pete, because they know that people get bored of just scrolling their phone with that little short attention span. And that's why they're making these mega Blade Runner 2, 3.5 hours, 3 hours or something. You know, that's why they're saying, oh, go and watch the new series of Game of Thrones, and you can watch all of it, one after another, like 10-hour marathon. So people want a longer attention span, yeah? They don't want to be just fiddling with the phone. And when they react against that, they've got something to offer you. Oh, you're getting bored. You want to start thinking, oh, wow, what about the plot line in Game of Thrones? If you watch 7 of them in a row, yeah, that will really fill your mind up with something.
I do agree with you. I was just thinking of another example that Jeff did in one of his recent videos, talking about the kind of questions that they're encouraging people to ask. He was pointing out, you know, a lot of the big channels, the trendy channels and whatever, are all over this kind of situation. But the questions they're getting people to think about are things like, what would happen if Superman punched me? Yeah, they're the kind of, as he points out in his video, they're the kind of questions that you think about when you're a school kid. You know, when you're 7 years old or something and you're chatting with your mates in school, you're like, oh yeah, what would happen if the Hulk did this or the Superman did that, or what? You know, they're interesting sort of, you know, mind experiments or mind exercises, you could say, you know, thinking through concepts and stuff like that. But when it comes to the adult world and all the stuff that's going on in the world, and yet that's what they're encouraging people to think about, and that just reinforces the kind of infantilization of the general populace, such that they never get to a level where they can put their thoughts together in a way like you were describing, where you've got so many commas that a single sentence is like a whole paragraph. When you were saying it, I was thinking of some of the technical papers and whatever I've read, and some of the philosophy stuff and whatever. And it's like, yeah, you can find one sentence will be like 20 commas. You're like, hang on, let me add that bit in, okay, and the next bit and the next bit, and it expands your thinking ability. So the very fact that they want to keep people in a really small, you know, very simplistic and very emotionally self-rewarding, you know, it's a narcissistic feedback thing again. You know, what would it be like if this happened to me? What would it be like if I was famous? What would it be like if this was given to me? All that kind of shit. Yeah? Like the lottery wish game that people play. You know, the amount of people I know that have paid over however many hundreds and thousands of pounds over the years playing that lottery week in, week out. And it's so, oh, come on, if you'd saved that money, you'd have a little nest egg now. But instead, you were fucking gambling it, basically.
One I could never understand was that football league. Make up your own league. Yeah, made of players from loads of different teams. So this is your fantasy football. Why was that so popular? I can't understand it. It was just, yeah. I mean,
it's mainly for males. I'd say that stuff is.
That's sexist. So you can't say that.
Well, I'd say a lot of men. Again, it's about directing energy, isn't it, and distraction. So they take you from, being really hooked on the football anyway, and whatever, and then take you to the next level, which is you play the thing in your head, and you think you're a manager. You're fantasizing that you're some kind of great football manager who's gonna win this great big jackpot. And it's that's all part of it. I mean, that's why you say it's like men and women as well. We're all being kept infantile to a certain degree. We're not being allowed to become adults because of all the stupid stimulus around and all the shit that's on TV and the rubbish people speak and laugh about. It's just there is good channels out there still doing comedy. There is one, Comedy Unleashed. Go and check it out. That's something that I was looking at recently, and it's nice to see there is still they call it uncensored comedy and all this, but it has to be in its little genre now, in a sense. Whereas on the mainstream now, all the comedy we see and all the rubbish now is it's very, very dumbed down stuff. We've talked about it for forever, doing this stuff, because it has been it's always been that way. So keep you in, like you say, that little box. And now with the internet, it's got more sophisticated. It can now give you your Google feed and all the rest of it, and keep you nicely happy and contented as you try and survive.
One good thing about that comedy channel, Pete, was I was surprised at the number of lesbians and gays who are comedians and they're the same. Wow, it's really nice to have free speech again.
Refreshing, isn't it? Yeah, refreshing to see still that you can still do that kind of comedy.
Yeah, so I mean, not all gay and lesbian people want to be a part of the censored LGBT community with its agenda. Some of them, they just want to be an old style comedian that can talk about anything. Yeah, but that's how censorship is so, across the board. Yeah,
I wanted to add in sort of like a caveat, the usual kind of caveat stuff that I'll do. Welcome to the Caveat Show. It's sort of a show, but not quite. So that's one caveat. Escapism is not necessarily a bad thing. It's useful. It can be beneficial. It's a good way to de-stress. If you've got a lot of shit going on in your life, you need to de-stress every now and then. It's good to go out in nature and get away from all the hubbub and stuff like that. That's a good way to de-stress. So I was in the middle of trying to get a picture open. That was why it was going beding at us. But I was going to say, it's one thing to do that. So I don't want people to think in a similar fashion to what I was trying to describe with the free speech, where they're saying you have to pick one side or the other and be absolutely only that side kind of thing. It's the same thing with this kind of entertainment, escapism, talking about things like games and stuff like that. I don't see there's anything wrong with some of the pastimes, not all of them, some of them. But at the same time, it's a pastime. It's not something that's meant to be the whole of your life.
Yeah.
But this is part of what they like to give people the impression of. You can do nothing but play games for your entire life. Do fantasy league football for your entire life. It's not realistic, is it? It's not good for you. So having a bit of escapism, having an ability to de-stress, could suggest lots of other things, like go out in nature, learn to play an instrument, learn to draw or something. There's plenty of ways you could de-stress that don't involve absorbing their polluted, manipulative propaganda bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
no, I was saying, and breathe. Remember breathing?
Don't forget to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about, again, calming that mind down, isn't it? Because a lot of people are just, it is, myself included, life's busy, and you've got to find those moments to, try and, just ground yourself and center yourself again and you know, make, you know, see sense, you know, because you get easily flung off yourself, you know, off track by all the shit that goes on.
Destabilized.
Yeah, it's constant destabilization of the individual. So, you know, you've got to work out techniques and things for yourself and go, right, okay, I'm not doing that today. I'm not having that thing. I'm not going to, you know, you work out your own little pattern in the day which suits you, in a sense of how you live your life, in a sense. Yeah, go on.
So that was why I put that image up earlier,
the
old war propaganda thing, because it's that's just a reference of saying how they utilize fear primarily against people, but really it's any emotions, because if they can keep you stuck in that emotional thinking only, we're not either or, we're emotional and rational. And it's having a good balance between the two that is the most beneficial to us. And I'm saying that as a plural, I'm adding the plural on it because I'm confident enough that plenty of other people see this as well, not just me. But if they can keep you stuck in the emotional, mainly that's fear. We've often talked about that. They use fear against people, etc. But it can be other emotions as well. So they can keep you in sadness. They just saturate you with all these terrible images and news stories and whatever, and that makes people depressed. Or they can keep you in a sense of unhealthy exuberance, like they keep trying to tell us everybody's got some kind of mental illness, and bipolar, what they call bipolar now, is quite prevalent as one of the mental disorders that they've categorized. And that is the kind of thing that they're doing to people. You can be happy if you want, but you've got to be happy. You've got to be joy happy. Nothing is allowed to interfere with your happiness. You've got to be so happy that people end up thinking you're a bit crazy because you don't see the shit that's happening to you in your life, because you're just ignoring it and going, no, I'm happy. Honest, I am. I'm happy. Look at my Instagram profile. That's just as much mental illness as somebody who's depressed.
Yeah, well, that's a falseness, isn't it? That people, the masks they'll wear, or trying to cope with life in general. So they develop a sort of caricature of themselves, in a sense. And you think, where's the real you gone? Where's you? A bit like Alex Jones back in the day. Where's Alex Jones? It was just this ranting. It's like, where's it's almost like they become their image, or they become whatever they've developed, maybe through trauma in teenage life as well, and stuff like that, growing up. And all kinds of abuse that goes on,
the gaslighting and fake news, that whole agenda where they don't care if the news is fake anyway. It's about teaching people to put all of their faith in illusions. They go from illusion to illusion. And this is something that struck me the other day, why some people get the truth movement wrong. They don't understand it. So let me describe three people. There's the one at the bottom, like Stephen Molyneux, who says, well, you can't beat them, so you might as well join them. And then there are those that say, well, you can't beat them, so you might as well stand on the side and sneer at them and become a cynic. And the truth movement is not about cynicism. Then there's the truth movement, which frees you from illusions. Now, obviously, Stephen Molyneux and the cynic, the person that's cynical about everything, they said, well, you can't beat them, so we might as well just stand on the sidelines and sneer at them. They're obviously still under an illusion, aren't they? If they think they can't be beaten. Because anybody that starts out on any kind of modus operandi thinking destruction is a, potential tool, is going to end up destroying themselves. Happens every time. And that's what they do. That's what they are. They will destroy themselves. There's not going to be any war. The war is about surviving until they've destroyed themselves. Because they will. The closer they get to that new world order, total power, the more they will start fighting each other for it. It's that's what will happen. So a lot of people see the truth movement, they think, oh, you're all just being cynical. No, we've freed ourselves from the illusions. It can look like cynicism, but it is not, because cynicism is basically defeatist. Oh, we can't beat them, so we might as well just try to minimize the effects.
I think cynicism is a tool. It's not an ideology to live by. It's it's not a mentality that you want to be your dominant concern, but it is a very good tool because you can use cynicism to cut away bullshit faster than most of the general research. You look for the things that just make you feel that sense of, how can I describe it? It just makes you automatically reactive. Like, that's got to be shit.
Yeah. It's like there's a short flight of steps between the world of illusion and breaking illusion, and the first step is cynicism. Yeah, it's no, you're getting away from it, but it's not the last step. You've got a few more steps to go afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's a good way to describe
it. But I like to think the truth though is still, like you say, the truth movement, whatever that is or was or still is, I don't know, but I just know that in myself, you just see and you want to know what, okay, you're lying to me, and we see the lies. It's constant lying, isn't it? You've seen it since the day we were born, if you go, if you can remember that far back. But I mean, more so than ever with the media, the way it's all set up now. And you have to go to alternative sources or people with feet on the ground to tell you the truth about something, who were there, who witnessed it, or on the ground, or whatever. And you're not going to get it from your mainstream, as we know. It's not going to come via that direction. And most people, I think, are calling most of the news out these days in a sense, it's just, like you say, cynicism, and it's a load of bollocks, and don't even watch it now. It's not worth it. But still, they're pushing these agendas around us, and that's something they haven't stopped doing, because we're still giving our energy to it. We're still being distracted. We're still being sort of led down the path, and not being savvy enough to think, hang on a second, let's not put my energy here, let's do it over here instead and do something good with it. They're getting us to misuse our own energy rather than using it correctly. And like we said, they're very good at it just by using the language in a certain way and getting the whole nations or whole, generations to behave a certain way and think it's okay, and normalizing it all the time, and that's good, bend the knee, bend, all this, you have to submit, and this is all part of the programming. Yeah, go on.
Nubian was saying a similar thing earlier on, saying, it's okay to free yourselves from illusion, but we're still talking about Prince Andrew here. And so that made me think of something I saw the other week, something that's positive. And it's on the screen right now. And they found a couple of hundred of these across Northern Europe, yeah? And it's a dodecahedron, yeah, with these little knobs on, yeah? And it comes from the Roman times. And you probably would never guess what it's used for, yeah? Okay, here's a guy. This is a dodecahedron that is 3D printed. It's got the little knobs on, yeah? Mm-hmm. And what he's doing, he's using it to knit, yeah? You can see he gets a needle and he kind of hooks a piece of thread over the little nodule. He's got a bad camera here. But anyway, when he gets to the end, yeah, there it is. That's the glove, yeah? So basically, this part of the thing, yeah, you can see he's pulling the fingers of the glove out, yeah? And you end up with the end of a glove because, the Romans got cold when they went to Northern Europe. And they wanted these inside to their things. And they used to find these, yeah? Where did it have it? I'm not sure if he had the picture at the beginning, yeah? But a couple of these, they found them, yeah? Like I say, a couple of hundred of these things. And they used to find them in money chests, a couple of them. They found them in a great big box full of coins, yeah? And Ken Wheeler, who does the magnetic stuff, he's saying, yeah, well, of course you did. This is a money-making tool. If you've got one of these, you can quickly knit gloves, yeah? And you can make a lot of money using one of these.
Probably like a franchise, like people who, open up a little shop doing a particular service, like 3D printing. Yeah, that would be the equivalent back then, because you'd have to have a certain amount of money to buy one of those items from a craftsman who make them, and you invest that little bit of money, and then you use that, and you sit there and you churn out your gloves and sell the gloves.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a difficult thing to make by hand any time up to the 1890s, really. But that's bloody difficult to make one like that, yeah? And the thing, what it was, the guy that worked out what it was actually used for noticed that the holes in the middle are different sizes, yeah? And there's 5 holes, and they're like small, medium, big, medium, small, And he worked out, oh, well, that's the same as a hand, maybe. Yeah.
I have wondered if the ones that they've found mainly around Scotland and the Orkney Isles could have been something similar, some kind of device used in some other thing, like used for measurements or something like that, or as a consistent weight. Even though they might have fancy designs on them and stuff, that might have been for purely ornamental reasons, but it was the size and consistent weight, maybe, or something like that, that they were using it for.
Well, I watched a video the other day. It was about the work of Casey, and this guy is like telling you about the number of times all across the world where you've seen these big winged gods carrying a little man bag, which somebody says represents the rising and setting sun. I thought this guy was eventually going to tell me at the end of the video, but even he won't tell you exactly what he thinks they are, which was really annoying.
I suggested that idea. I think we were talking about it a while ago from one of the other videos that was out there, talking about Göbekli Tepe, because the one pillar has got 3 of them in a row. Yeah. And we're talking about the possibility of maybe it was the equivalent of like a set square, where they had these regular shapes that they would make that represented the rising sun, and they'd use that as a reference measurement or something.
Yeah, and it reminded me as well of the fool in the tarot deck who carries a bag over his shoulder, and when he eventually reaches the end of the tarot progression, the magician opens the bag up and he's got the little tools of the thing. Yeah, and the stones in Scotland, I mean, there are a number of things you can do. You could smooth down some mud and use them as a template. The patterns that are actually on the stone, you just roll it around over some wetted mud, and you've got you've got an impression. And the ones that are geometric, as you roll them over the mud, you've got the angles that you can build. You could use for building. Also, though, you can wrap pieces of string around them to get an exact distance. But that little man bag, that's what I'm thinking. It's both symbolic of somebody who has conquered time, somebody that knows that time goes in cycles, Like, I mean, dogs have no idea, and people aren't dogs, but at that most subjective level, the snow in the middle of winter is like, where's the sun gone? And you can't even remember what sunlight is like, a nice warm day,
It's like that here in the UK at the moment.
It's horrible and cold.
So that man bag of the setting and rising sun represents somebody who's got an understanding of time.
And the knowledge to calculate it and to track it. It's one thing. I've watched a lot of stuff and I've read a fair amount of stuff about a lot of those concepts that are brought up in that video. Is talking about those kind of images, those pictographs. Are they pictographs or pictograms? I'm not sure, but visual imagery. And I've got to say, the one thing he doesn't mention, it's what's his name, Vere, is it John Vere? I can't remember now. But he doesn't really address the questions about the iconography, the symbolism itself. He's approaching it purely from a kind of like practical point of view, because he said he's somebody who works with his hands. He's a stonemason, so he's used to applying practical questions and solutions to things. So he's looking at it as if this is actually representing a physical thing. So when you see the classic image of I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, the Sumerian god with the big fish headdress on and carrying the bag that you're referring to, the man bag. When you see that image, he's looking at it as if this is a carving or drawing of what the guy actually looked like. So the guy must have been carrying a bag and wearing some kind of elaborate headdress that looked like a fish. But if you interpret the imagery on a symbolic level, then it can have certainly very important meaning and ramifications to that culture and things that are still going on today. and not have any need to have been a literal physical thing at all. Yeah, the man was the in many other cultures, what it was, is the god or demigod that brings knowledge, like you suggesting, the knowledge of the movement of time, so the tracking of the sun and the stars and whatever. And the fact he's wearing a fish headdress represents that he's come from below. He's come from the underworld. And also, don't forget that in a kind of theological sense, most religions refer to the original waters, the waters of life that the Creator used to form everything else and whatever. So if this guy's wearing a fish headdress, that represents that he's come from that level of reality. So he's divine or has an element of divinity in him, and he's emanating out of the waters of all creation, the same as God used to create everything. You know, there's symbolic sub-layers to that whole imagery. And what I appreciate that guy's work, because I think he's done a really good job at collating and amalgamating all the different evidence that there is to show this stuff from all around the world. And I really appreciate that, because a lot of it is deliberately hidden from the general public. You know, not necessarily each individually hidden, but the obvious connections between them is being hidden or obfuscated to serve the benefit of the academic world, which helps keep the whole structure of the hierarchy in place. But the point is, to me, is he's missing the symbolic element. And that adds into linguistics and culture and all the development that goes along with society. So if he added that in as well, you can see how there is a wealth of physical evidence that there are these common themes through every religious and spiritual belief system around the world. All of them have, maybe not all of them have all of these elements, but they'll have a little bit here and there. But there are these common themes that date right the way back into before recorded history, into ancient antiquity. And if you can see some of the symbolism, like I was saying about the fish head and the bag and stuff like that, there are connections to this stuff, which to me means that there is some kind of truth in this. Well, you know, how it all ties together and whatever is one of those big debates and questions, but there is something to this. This is not just people in ancient times like drawing funny pictures of guys with fish heads. No.
You find it from the same area as the fish head god comes. Well, a desert area, which is where a lot of the Muslim stuff comes from. You know, they put a very strong emphasis on fountains and water because they don't have it in the desert. And, you know, with Dagon, the fish head, you know, you're talking about a racial memory of the flood. How would people living in a desert think about that? And so, yeah, sure, you know, water is very important to them. But also, you know, it's the patriarchal illusion is so strong that they don't dare admit that there are these gods that are male and female at the same time. Everybody says, oh, it's Baphomet. Oh, it's Baphomet. BS. They put an equal importance on the male and the female. Yeah, and the creator God is both at the same time. And, you know, that's not a difficult concept at all, I don't think. It doesn't have to be.
For those people, I know I'm pretty confident in saying most of it comes from the Christian demographic and primarily out of America. I know some people get upset about this kind of stuff. I'm just saying it the way I see it. And just ask them, well, what gender is your God? And they'll say either neither or both, or they'll then get confused and then probably start to attack you verbally because you've made them question of anything that's included in their own text, their own doctrine. Their creator God is both and neither at the same time. So they're complaining about people presenting information that there are other cultures that also have the same kind of ideas, that their creator gods are both genders and neither at the same time. But that means they're Satan. Whoa. Yeah.
Well,
that again is an example of how they like to keep people corralled into certain kinds of groupthink and then get them to emotionally contest with other groups.
And they want to keep a lid on all the ancient stuff. It seems really ancient stuff. Like you say, it's hard to find most of the pieces that were in, I think it was the British Museum, are all now stored away in the back, that were of any real, like, got people to really think about the past. Whereas back in the 1920s and 30s, they were still on display, all these types of stuff. But people weren't questioning it enough, but yeah, and it seems to be that's the case. We saw recently, you mentioned Göbekli Tepe up in Turkey. That's a much bigger site, as we know, 50 times bigger than what's there already, which is huge, and they just put a World Heritage stamp on it, and that's it. No more, no more exploration. Just what you've got now. So they do shut things down. Do it in Avebury as well. They've done the same with more discoveries that could be, that are there. They've done ground penetrating radar to see what's underneath the ground, and there's lots of things, but they're not allowed to dig.
There might be. I'm just speculating, but maybe they're hoping they can do similar to Egypt, where now they've got just the right amount of evidence to turn around and claim that they are the original seat of all civilization in the world. And they can start building the massive, seriously massive tourist industry and profit associated with it around Göbekli Tepe. So if they dig up any more, they might spoil that discovery by adding other information that could add in other questions or stuff like that. Yeah. So they're probably thinking, oh, we've got enough now to be able to use this and say we were first. Okay, let's start building a gift shop.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's just the place you've been, but you don't really know what it was about.
That's me using cynicism to speculate.
Yeah. Like the endless tourists who turn up at these places. Yeah, like you say, it's just turned into a business.
There is a lot of stuff going on to do with that revealing of the past that helps disrupt what was the dominant narrative that has been in place for a couple of thousand years, maybe certainly 1,000 years, and that then lends to the argument that what is occurring is an apocalypse, because the word apocalypse means revealing, it doesn't mean destruction. And there is a revelation going on of people having more access to information. Yes, like we often talk about, that problem then of discernment between truth and lies, and the system puts out loads of propaganda and disinformation, and so do other groups, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but the point is more people now have more access to more information. So there is a revelation effect occurring, and a lot of the information that is being revealed is stripping apart what was once the dominant paradigm. And it's becoming obvious that a lot of the claims that have been made under the disguise of religious institutions and other groups like that, they may not necessarily be a religious group, but they're a political group or something. Yeah, those claims are being revealed to be just another, people saying, "Oh, I made this first. Oh, this belongs to me." Just making up bullshit to try and claim some kind of authority over a situation. Whereas really, a lot of the information that has proved beneficial to the overall health and well-being of all people, the individual and in collective groups, comes from a long time ago, before any of these other religions start putting this information together and turning around and saying, "Oh, we made this, now you've got to pay difference to us. We're in charge now because we're the one-eyed man with the bit of knowledge and you're all the blind sheep that need to follow what we say." I'm thinking things like the Denisovans, the discovery of that shows that the generally currently accepted timeline to do with human development is obviously not right or not complete. And there's other things like Göbekli Tepe and stuff like that. Discoveries are being made at such a rapid pace now that claim to authority that's based on a dominant system that's been in place for 1,000+ years is shaking at the foundation. And I get it that this is why for a lot of people, especially Christians, they see it as being like the time of revelations and whatever, because all this stuff is happening, and it is very similar to what's described in their theology, in their scripture. But at the same time, it can also be seen from a different point of view, and it can also be part of a deliberate gaslighting game being played by the system that wants you to think that the bad things in your religion are just about to happen, so that then you're more willing to buy their bullshit.
Yeah.
It's been placed there in those books specifically. If people start waking up to the lie, it runs parallel with their story of the end of the world or something, you know?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it as being your psychological paradigm, then it is the end of your world. You know, it's been a while since I sort of talked about it from this point of view, but I did a few shows about this kind of stuff in the past. When people talk about the end of the world, are they talking about the end of the physical world of the whole globe and all the people on it? Or are they talking about the end of their concept of what they think the world is?
Yeah.
When your paradigm gets destroyed, then to you,
time ago for me, I'm a veteran now, Cookie. That was a long time ago.
But it feels like your world is being destroyed. And I think it might have been 2012 when we was talking about this stuff, right? Because I was trying to explain the kind of Mayan prophecy idea and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, look, the Mayans never said the world would end. They said the way you lived, the world you have known will change. It will no longer exist the way you knew it. So in other words, your paradigm dies and you begin a new paradigm. It's a changing of the age. The civilization that you knew up until that point has fallen apart and died, turned to chaos. So people develop a new way to live. So a new paradigm begins. And it is, people feel like it is, their world is dying. They're suffering a bereavement.
Well, it's like the tarot we mentioned before as well about the death card. That doesn't mean you're going to die. That's the same meaning. It's a end of something, beginning of something new. And that's, you know, again, people buy on the fear though, or imagery, things like this. And it's sold to people to be in fear anyway, a fear of death. You know, that's the main one, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, that's the big one.
That's the main one. Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, you've got to be afraid of something that's part of your life. It's intrinsically guaranteed by your very fact of existing. Yeah, at some point in your life, you will experience death. It's going to happen. So let's make you afraid of it. Then that way we're guaranteed to always have a fear that we can use to manipulate you with.
Yeah, and hang on to your youth to as much of a degree where you'll even go to crazy levels of looking like a, I don't know, a plastic clown when you're about 70 or something. I don't know.
Or you'll get some special injections so that you don't sweat anymore.
Oh, no sweating. Yeah. And no hair.
You won't have to worry about buying deodorant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's a good place to wind it up. I want to just roll back through the chat and say hello. I can see there's already there's people I didn't say.
And you stop going to the regular barbers and you start going to the ear, nose and throat barbers. Throat specialist barbers.
I go to the mirror in the bathroom barbers. It's great. I got some scissors and some clippers, and it's just like, look, you got hairy bits there. Trim them.
Yeah, people don't want to die. They want to stay forever young and in that kind of little capsule. But it's not how it's meant to be. That's not. You would never be happy like that. It's.
I think well, man, this is one of them things as well, isn't it? You know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, of course. Youth can be beautiful because it's like looking at a newly budding flower. You can see the potential in it. You see the freshness and all that kind of stuff. But age has got a beauty of wisdom to it, a beauty of experience. You know, the very fact that of survival. You know, if somebody's 100 years old, it's like, wow, you've survived 100 years. That is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But people, they want you to be obsessed with you're afraid of dying, aren't you? That means you should want to be young again, because when you were young, you were beautiful, and that gets people stuck in that trap. Then.
Yeah. But beauty is Carillion in nature anyway. So old people can be beautiful as well. I mean, I noticed that, I mean, I was watching one of those videos about Carillion photography, And the next day when I'm out in the street, you know, I've seen a few babies and small kids, and I thought, whoa, man. Yeah, I've suddenly seen them in a new light. Yeah. The Carillion symmetry that you see in young children. Yeah. Oh man, it's amazing. Yeah. They're just, the soul energy just comes straight out of them. Yeah. And if you can keep that even when you're older, yeah, and throw off the illusions of what you're supposed to look like and just feel good and happy. Yeah.
You radiate beauty.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you can, doesn't matter how fucking ugly you are, if you can shine bright enough,
And then give them an iPad when they're old enough.
I'm sure I saw Lowlands Pete in the chat earlier. I can't scroll the chat room back far enough.
He was in, he was in. So hi, Pete.
Have you ever seen somebody like on a train station, sort of in the semi-dark, you know, and they're sitting there and the screen is lighting up their face, and you think they look like some demon or something? There's more light in that screen than there is in the person holding it. You know, it's almost like they're sucking the energy out of the bones as they've lost so much of themselves.
Like a photonic vampire, a photonic vampire.
Yeah. I mean, they started out as a normal person, but they just faded away as they were staring at that phone.
We just give a shout out to the new people that joined the chat room. Lewis R, hello. And I mentioned Lowlands Pete was in earlier as well. Hello, mate. Scroll down quick. I know I saw a few other names. Thanks for joining in the chat room, folks. Like I was ranting about last week and earlier on, it's here for you to make use of. Hopefully you make good use of it and communicate with others and not just, you know, vent your spleen. If all you're going to do is spout profanity, you'll only have a short window, you know, and then you'll get booted. So, what star sign are you? Well, I'm a cock and bull story, mate. Taurian and rooster in the Chinese, which is a lunar-based zodiac. So I'm partly bull and partly cock. I'm part bull and all cock. I should have used that chat-up line years ago. I never thought of that. It's better than saying, hi, I'm a Sagittarius. Yeah, I know, you cheesy bugger. But anyway, sorry. Saying hello to everyone. Apple Charlotte, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. And I'm pretty sure I said hello to everybody else. Yeah, thanks for joining in. The chat room did lag a little bit, but it seemed to catch up eventually. So I'll try and keep an eye on the chat if you're posting any questions. I'm sorry if I do miss them. And if I do miss you, Tempest Harbour, hello. Thanks for joining in, right, all the way from the other side, from the far off land. I don't believe in Australia. I think it's a hologram. It's a fake. It's a hoax. It's just a conspiracy theory on the internet. It doesn't really exist. Of course, I'm being deliberately silly and facetious. It was just an example I used a few years ago to try and explain the kind of auto-hoaxing problem that was deliberately being spread across in a similar fashion, like some of the other stuff we've been talking about. In a similar fashion, they were doing it to entrap people, to cause this effect that most of the general public will look at what's going on and think that everyone's crazy because there's just this wave, this tsunami of people saying everything is a hoax. So I use the example of, well, I've never actually physically visited Australia myself, so I only know it exists from outside information, from sources that are not personal experience gnosis. So I could easily say that Australia doesn't exist because I've got to rely on trusting other people, you know. They could show me a picture, but I could say, oh, well, that picture's been doctored. Look, there's no sweat. There's such, silliness. Don't sweat. Yeah, I don't believe it. I'm sure there's a biological reasoning why you would be probably dead soon enough if you couldn't sweat. It would certainly make you extremely ill if you were no longer able to perspire properly, because your skin is the biggest organ of your body and you breathe through your skin, you exude pollutants and whatever out through the pores of your skin. You know, you bring in other things like salts and stuff like that through your skin. If you can't sweat, no, your body, your biology would have been collapsing in on itself. Anyway, yeah. Digressing back to the silly story of distraction. Michael Allen, hello. Sorry, I couldn't, for some reason, it's not uploading your avatar, so I only just noticed. Anyway, that's a good place to leave it at that. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining in, guys.
And thanks to Gary for those funny images there. They're funny. Thank you.
And I'm sorry if I mentioned last week about doing a Q&A, and I didn't exactly do a Q&A tonight. We'll get round to it at some point. I just felt I needed to rant about the printzs, pedo, and the free speech question stuff. So that's what you got instead. Maybe another time we'll do more questions, and we'll come back to some of the other questions that have been brought up before. Okay.
I think the Leeds are saying he fancied Greta. I mean, that looks a bit like Leeds to me, super Leeds. Fancying Greta. But never mind.
That's not Wensleydale. You can't put that on your cracker. Maybe hey, there's a sales gimmick. Somebody do Greta crackers.
And that was Macron.
The cracker has got like her face on it, you know.
Instead of Jesus. Macron isn't looking too bothered that the Gillette Jaunes have just had a first year anniversary.
Yeah, it was the 1 year, wasn't it? So something we can talk about that stuff on Wednesday, because I wanted to talk about Hong Kong and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's a good one to bring up for Wednesday night. Check out Wednesday night. We'll be on the Reality Chat channel doing Reality Chat, where we talk about news, events, things that have been going on in the week. Check Steve to Goose on Thursday night for the mystery show. And please go and check out Really Graceful and Jeff C. He's on his Supreme Lord Commander channel tonight. Not everybody out there is just spouting crap. You know, there's a lot of good people putting out good information, good work, making an effort to make use of their free speech while we still have the ability to make good use of it.
Yeah. Well
don't get despondent. Get some righteous anger about this shit that's going on, but then use the energy of that anger into channeling into something good that you can work on, rather than them just using it as a tool to mess you about with. Anyway, I should shut up now. Hugh McMahon, hello in the chat room. Sorry. Doing my usual of checking the chat room at the last minute. Thanks for joining us, folks. Catch you again soon. Take care. Cut cheese. I'm going to click the button. I clicked it. I clicked the button. Sorry, guys. I thought it was just seemed like it was getting a bit rambly at the end, so I was trying to rush to shut it up, or to shut me up.
We're still live here.